I am not a disgrace. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman!
May I have this dance?
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
Wayne. Bruce Wayne.
I appreciate the rescue.
I'm surprised to see you here. From what I've heard, this isn't really your sort of affair.
I've decided to get out more. Have a little fun.
Enjoying yourself so far?
More than I expected. How about you? What brings you to the City of Lights?
I never miss a good party. I may also have to attend to some business while I'm in town.
I'll do what I can.
Thanks. We've never dealt with anyone like Deadshot before.
Maybe you have. Ronald Marshall's PDA. There's a Popmail account. It links to an encrypted wire transmission exactly 1 week before Teresa Williams' assassination.
You sure you know how to fly one of these things?
It's kind of cramped in here. Why don't you fly alongside us?
Not all of us gods can fly, like not every superhero can fly. Right, Batman?
I swear I can almost hear his blood pressure rising.
The gods test us in many ways.
Come on, Bruce. Stay with me. You know who I was thinking about the other day?
Who?
Magpie.
The criminal?
Do we know another Magpie? Whatever happened to her?
She died.
No. Are you sure?
Reasonably.
Why is it the good villains never die?
Clark, what the hell are good villains?
They got their weapon. I got cheated out of my childhood.
I know what that's like.
You do, don't you? You don't have to answer. I read your mind. That's how I knew you weren't going to use Mrs. Waller's weapon on me.
No. I wasn't.
You were going to try and talk me into fixing what I've changed. Before I die.
Yes.
I'm dying very soon.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Could you stay with me? I'm scared.
Got a minute?
What do you want?
You made contingency plans to stop everybody in the League just in case any one of us ever went bad.
My contingencies were intended to immobilize, not kill.
But Savage came up with a plan to bury you.
I assume so. It wasn't one of mine. Was that it?
With all that talk about unchecked power, you're still so arrogant you didn't bother to come up with a plan to stop yourself.
I do have a plan. It's called the Justice League.
Just wanted to be sure.
What is it?
If the League ever did go over to the wrong side, I want there to be somebody I can trust to keep the planet safe. Even from me.
It means this is the end, Selina. It means we can't. I can't.
I will see you again, right?
No one will. Gotham needs something more, something worse to defend her. She needs a new myth. A legend more powerful than I can be right now.
Does the hurt ever go away?
I wish I could say yes. But it will get better in time. For you. That I promise.
I really don't like YouTube. I spent 2 hours and my voice is almost gone. But let's do this. So, I basically, for the past 2 hours was... Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to say this. YouTube didn't allow the video to be live. It said it was live, and I've been live streaming, but you guys haven't seen it. I said things that I haven't told anybody about how much this show and this character meant to me. And all of that was just... wow. I don't even know if I can repeat that, because that was gut-wrenching, some of that stuff. But anyway, I was first introduced to Kevin Conroy when I was about probably 9 years old. And the Batman that we had back then was very different than Kevin's Batman. Michael Keaton was Batman, and he was very different type of Batman. He had changed a lot of people's perception of the character from this campy goofball that Adam West portrayed to this menacing, murderous, vengeful knight. And when word was out that Fox Kids was going to be releasing a Batman cartoon show, a lot of people were freaking out a little bit because they were like, what version of Batman are we going to see? No one had any idea. In fact, when Bruce Timm and company started working on the show, the studio actually thought they were going to do a version of, Michael Keaton's Batman. Like it was going to be a tie-in to the movie or something, or it would have something to do with that character. Kind of like how Ruby Spears' Superman was a connection to Christopher Reeves. It was a short-lived cartoon show that came out in the late 80s, and it had the John Williams Superman theme. It had the very optimistic and lighthearted, Clark Kent, and it was not necessarily a continuation of Christopher Reeve's Superman, but it was more like an extension of it. So the animated series was its own beast altogether. It wasn't what you think it was. And the studio, they struck gold. The story of the Batman the Animated Series begins with an actor by the name of Kevin Conroy, who was born in, I believe, near New York City, and he was a Juilliard actor, a stage actor, Shakespearean actor. And he had never done cartoons. He was familiar with Batman, but he knew the Adam West version of Batman, and he had seen trailers for Michael Keaton's Batman, which was very different than, Adam West. And he got a call from a friend in LA to come and do a reading for a brand new Batman cartoon. And Kevin was, very excited by the prospect, but he didn't want to voice Batman. He didn't want to be the main character. He said the main characters were very stiff and boring, and, you can't really do a lot with those characters. So he actually showed up for a reading for Harvey Bullock. And a lot of this stuff didn't come out until a few years ago. During the pandemic is when Kevin opened up about his story with Batman, how it happened, how he got the role. And it wasn't what people really thought. He didn't sign up to be Batman. He wanted to be a lesser-known character that he could have a lot of fun with. He thought, if he played a detective, he could do, like, a detective stereotype voice. I'm Detective Bullock, a blasted Batman, that kind of thing. He thought he got to be a character as a character. Like, he would get to voice someone with a personality. He didn't want to play Batman. Batman's a very stoic, sad individual. And what fun and what acting could you do as Batman? So he shows up for the audition, and he's very surprised that they don't want him to do Bullock. They're like, well, we've had a lot of people come in and do a reading for Batman, and it hasn't been what we're looking for. And Conroy steps into the booth. He's like, well, I was here to try out a lesser part, like Bullock. I'd really like to do that. They're like, here's the script, here's a picture, and are you familiar with this character? And Kevin's like, yeah. He says, I watched the Adam West show, and Bruce Timm was like, nope. We need you to forget all of that and the Keaton movies, and we need you to look at this character and then give us a voice. And Kevin looked at the character, and they explained a little bit the tragic backstory of Batman. You know, he lost his parents when he was 8 years old to crime. He is a very lonely, solitude character that wages an unending war on crime that will never end. And his sole mission in life is to make sure that no 8-year-old loses their parents to crime. And it's a war that he'll never win, but yet he fights it relentlessly every night to protect the innocent. And then they told him to go. And Kevin just started reading, and his voice changed. It went from his normal, you know, "Hi, I'm Kevin Conroy," to this very low, dark, menacing voice. And everybody in the booth was just scrambling around like crazy. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And Kevin was still reading, but he was looking around and he was like, there are two things that happen when an actor sees this. When he sees people in the booth freaking out. You're either doing something either A, very good, or B, very, very bad. And he got the part. And Kevin went on to play Batman for 30 years in so many different incarnations. He is the only Batman actor to portray multiple versions of a multiverse Batman. It hasn't been done before, and it will never be done again. Batman, Kevin Conroy, was able to get so many roles because of us, the fans, requesting his return. And he loved us for that. And we loved him for that. Every time he came into the role of Batman, he showed the fans something new. And he kept getting jobs. He kept getting requests. Video games, theme parks, radio shows, commercials. He just kept playing the role. For me, he followed me my entire life. From the time I was like 9 years old to my career in game journalism. He's been a very familiar part of my life that I didn't even realize had such a significance to me. A lot of people don't know this, but I grew up in poverty. My family was not well off. We lived in some pretty intense places in New York and then in Michigan. And my dad's job did not pay very much. At all. When we moved away from my grandparents, my grandfather worked his entire life, and he had a house. He had food. When we moved away, I lived off SpaghettiOs and lasagna and spaghetti and things that I will not eat today because I can't stand it. I hate it. The animated series was such an eye-opening moment for me as a kid because it was something that was constant in my life. I didn't see much of my parents when I was little because they had to work. Because, you had to put food on the table, whether it was SpaghettiOs or cereal, which cereal became my treat because it was just it was easy to get. It wasn't too expensive. There would be milk for cooking. So there would be milk for cereal. And cereal became my favorite thing in the world. Also, going up to stay with my grandparents was always great. And I happened to be a lucky kid because I was at my grandparents' house who had cable the day that Kevin Conroy first wowed the world as Batman in the Cat and Claw. And I knew of Batman. I knew of the Adam West Batman because of the videotapes my grandma would send me of Adam West. She would record shows for me on the Family Channel or USA Cartoon Express or Fox Kids or whatever. You know, we had VHS. We had a black and white TV once in a while. And I would watch those shows, and I got to know Batman, and I was familiar with the Keaton movies, but I wasn't really allowed to see them because, you know, they were very not for kids. Even though I had merchandise for Keaton stuff as a kid that I would get for Christmas and birthdays, that my parents would, you know, really work hard to be able to give us good Christmas and a good birthdays, because my life as a small kid sucked. I had hand-me-down clothes from relatives. I got made fun of in school because I didn't have proper clothes. And because I wore sweatpants, I had kids pants me several times when I was a little guy. Because I broke my arms when I was a kid, I didn't have the bone mass didn't grow back properly, so it looked like I had like very feminine arms. So kids like made fun of me and they messed with me because I didn't, you know, I didn't have like that natural development like on one side of my body. As for a man, my arms were very badly damaged, that even the school neglected to give me physical therapy until I was almost graduating from grade school. So I broke my arms in 3rd grade. I didn't get physical therapy because we were poor until around 5th grade. So my arms were underdeveloped for what age I was. So yeah, my life was not very good. My mom got very sick right around the time the animated series came out, and she was taken to a hospital, New Hampshire, where she lived for about 1.5 years. And I only had my dad and my sister. And my dad had to take on multiple work just to make ends meet. So in the summer, we would stay with my grandparents while my dad was, you know, affording housing and all this other, you know, do whatever he could to put food on the table and stuff. I was up at my grandparents, and, you know, I was just kind of sitting around, wasn't really having the best day ever, and I saw a commercial that said Batman was coming on TV. And I was like, oh, I'm familiar with Batman. And Grandma was telling me, you know, it's almost time for, you know, your TV's privileges are almost done for the day. And it's like, okay, well, you know, I'd really like to watch this. And my grandpa's like, hey, Mindy, let the boy watch some Batman. You know, go do the garden stuff or something. And my grandma's like, okay, Joseph. You know, so I'm sitting there, and the title card comes up. It says The Cat and Claw. And I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be like that Keaton thing, right? It's very dark. It's got the animated, you know, it's got the Batman theme that I've heard, like the new Batman theme by Danny Elfman or whatever. But I didn't know it was Danny Elfman. I didn't know that kind of stuff. So I heard that, and I was like, okay, this is going to be really cool. And I saw the world, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. And then the Catwoman music plays, you know, the da 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 da, and she's like running on rooftops, and there's full orchestra and all this other stuff. And then you see Batman, you know, in the shadows, like watching her, and I'm just like so enthralled. It's like, whoa, what is this? And I didn't hear Batman speak for a while. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to sound like Keaton, because he kind of looks like a Keaton Batman. He's all dark. And then this voice that I never heard before just, you know, resonates from this dark figure. But it didn't have, like, it didn't have, like, this menacing evilness to it. It sounded like there was compassion behind the voice. And I was just watching this with my grandpa. And even my grandpa was kind of like, he was like, I remember him saying, he's like, this is a cartoon? I'm thinking, yeah, this is a cartoon. And it just like, you know, my dad was coming to pick us up, and he caught the end of the episode, and he was sitting with us, and he was just like, wow, like, what is this? He says, this isn't the Batman I know of. He said, I would actually be okay with you watching this stuff. And I remember I was pleading with my grandma because we would be going home, and we had a VHS thing, and my grandma recorded cartoons, but she saw it, and she was like, this looks really violent. I don't know if I want you watching this. And I remember pleading with my grandma. I was like, Grandma, please, just, I can't watch this where we live. We don't have cable. We live in the boonies in this place in New York that doesn't, you don't even get, like, antenna signal. Like, the TV's fuzzy, all this other stuff. We have a Blockbuster that's 45 minutes away, and, you know, for $5 or $4 or whatever, you could rent, like, a bunch of movies. And, you know, this was before Mr. Pete's set up shop, which changed my life. And you guys remember the Mr. Pete's stories. That was a year before Mr. Pete's came. We had to drive 45 minutes to a Blockbuster and have a Blockbuster night, get a bunch of movies. And then Mr. Pete came and essentially put that Blockbuster out of business because he charged $3.99 and would let you take out 4 movies or 3 movies and 1 video game. And, you know, that just really opened up the doors for me, like entertainment and otherwise, to deal with all the emotional pain from school and, you know, not having family around all the time. So that was a big deal for me. But I remember I pleaded with my grandma to tape the show because she didn't want to do it. And she caved eventually, you know, and then she recorded it for me. And what really helped me transition out of being bullied and messed up was the animated series, because even though it took a while, I had seen the first episode, and I remembered so much about it, and I remembered the teasers for, like, upcoming episodes and when the show was going to premiere. So when I went back to school, you know, it would take a while for the big boxes of VHS tapes to come. There'd be, like, a decent-sized Amazon box with, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 videos of just Batman. Whether it was reruns or whatever, I didn't care. Pop it in my VCR, watch it on the black and white TV, and, you know, I would get to see Batman. And then, eventually, like, I think it was like 6 months after the show started, things were getting really rough, and my dad decided that it would be probably a good idea to, got a color TV, not a very good one, you know, just basic one. We actually, I believe we got the color TV from a dump. Like, that was back when people used to go to the local dump, and they would, like, discard their electronics they didn't want anymore. So it wasn't like it was, like, radioactive or it had, like, a lot of problems or anything like that. It was just, you know, some person in Albany or maybe Troy or whoever didn't want the TV anymore, and they just got rid of it. So, I mean, we were able to pick up a decent working color TV. And my dad decided to get, like, basic cable, which basic cable back then consisted of Cartoon Network, not Disney Channel, the Family Channel, Fox, which was local, like a WPX 11, which was a Warner Brothers thing in New York City, and it was like 30 other cable stations. It didn't matter, though. I could watch Power Rangers, I could watch Batman, all that other stuff made me happy. So that was fine. And my mom was very sick, but I didn't know because my dad was being smart and distracting us. My sister didn't really watch TV much. She, you know, just kind of basically read magazines or did whatever she did. I wasn't really close with my sister. I don't know. And when my dad would get home is right around the time when the animated series would be on anyway. But I would have to walk to the bus by myself, which was really far away. And, you know, I would deal with all the stuff that kids were harassing me about, you know, being poor and all this other stuff. And my mom is saying my parents were getting a divorce when my mom was sick and she was in the hospital. And my dad's job didn't pay enough because he was a pastor. And there was a lot of stuff I went through. So the Batman the Animated Series was my escape. I remember when, like, a while after the cable was installed, and by the time I was the last kid on the bus, I don't know if you guys know what that feeling was like, but if you're the last kid on the bus, that means you have a really sucky stop. So the bus driver would take everybody else home first, and even though you live closer to the school in a sense, Like, he would get on the highway and he'd go on the opposite way. So you'd be stuck on the bus for a while. Then he would drop me off once I got there, and since we lived in the boonies, like, I had a long walk back to where the house was. So by the time I got home, Batman the Animated Series was coming right on, and then my dad would be home like around 5:15 or 5:20 from work. Right around there. So I would get in the door and I'd rush to the TV and I would just miss the opening. Like, I would get there right as Batman is standing on top of the building, and then the lightning comes crashing down. And then I would get to just be in my own little world. I could tune out everything that happened and just watch the show. And, like, it became a huge part of my life. Like, it became something familiar. Something that I could look forward to 6 days a week. Monday through Friday in the afternoons, and then Saturday morning when I didn't have to go to school, that show was there. So that was a big deal for me. Before then, my grandma, recorded tapes, and I watched it in black and white and stuff like that, and it was fine. But being able to see the show in color and to watch it like without. Do you remember, like, when grandparents would tape, like, VHS tapes? They'd be kind of fuzzy. Sometimes the thing would get all, like, when you were watching it back, and then you'd have to find a way of do the tracking or whatever it was called to try to get the tape to even out. So it wasn't it wasn't always a perfect experience to rewatch shows that had already aired, but it was better than nothing. Like, it gave you entertainment. You were able to watch Scooby-Doo. You were able to watch Batman, Power Rangers, things like that. But once you had the ability to come home, like, around, I think it was early 93 or something like that, or winter of 93, because my mom came back from the hospital right around the end of 93. She was gone from 92 until mid 93. And like, just the aspect of being able to watch the show as it was airing, and then being able to talk to people so you wouldn't be bullied anymore. So, like, you weren't like this outsider to, the group of your peers. It was a huge difference for me. I could talk to people about Power Rangers, and I could talk to people about Batman, and it wasn't just like talking about what happened eventually during that season. It was like talking about what happened that day. And it opened up so many things for me. I got bullied less because it didn't look like I was just like this weird poor kid. It gave me more confidence. It gave me things to talk about. I was a very shy kid, and I had a very good memory, so I was able to understand the show a lot more than most people, and like retain a lot of stuff, and be able to say things back about what happened in the show. And I became, I wouldn't say popular, but more people would talk to me about the show than they would some other kids that were able to come to school with Batman stuff, So it was cool for me. Once I saw a TV thing where they were gonna have like the Mask of the Phantasm movie in theaters, and I was just like, I remember begging my dad, like, we got to go see this thing. And it's like, well, your mom and sister want to go see this Christmas movie. And it's like, well, this movie's coming out at Christmas. It's obviously a Christmas movie. And it's like, I really want to see this. And he's like, don't you want to see this other thing? Because I can only afford to take you to this one movie. And it's like, well, I really want to see this. So then my dad came up with a plan that the day we went to the movies, we were going to split up. So instead of him buying like 4 tickets to see some, I don't know what movie it was some Christmas movie at the time, I don't know. It would have been Christmas of like 93. Maybe it was Home Alone, I don't know. I don't care. But my dad and me went to see Mask of the Phantasm, and my sister and my mom went to see some other movie that doesn't matter. They had a terrible time. I had an amazing time seeing my movie. Because for me, it was like seeing something transcend from the small screen, like in my home, to this massive theatrical production that was the best Batman story I'd ever seen. And I had read Batman comics, but nothing to the degree that the animated series was. It was like everything came to life, you know? Batman was this character that had this dark, foreboding voice and lived in this dark world, but Bruce Wayne, even though he acted like a goofball sometimes, he had like this lightness to him and also compassion, and he cared about people, and he wasn't all that bad a guy. You know, he played it aloof, and he put on the performance of Bruce Wayne, but deep down he was a good person. And I got that, like, listening to the voice. So seeing the movie and seeing Batman's origin, because I read Batman Year One and other stuff. You know, my grandfather would give me comics for my birthday or Christmas or whatever. So I was familiar of some things. Even though my parents screened my comic books, you know, when I was little, so they would remove pages they thought were too violent. So sometimes I was missing part of the story, which bothered me as a kid, but it was better than nothing. They were very overprotective. So when I got to go to the theater and see this was my Batman's origin, like this was my Batman's Year One, I just remember walking away from the theater being like, this was the best thing I've ever seen. The only thing that I remember that I was sad about the movie is I was disappointed to see how few people showed up. Like, I remember not long after that, the movie critics, Siskel and Ebert or whatever, they gave the movie 2 thumbs up and said it was the best Batman movie they'd ever seen, and they were devastated that nobody went to see it. And that was basically the outcome of that movie. Greatest Batman movie that ever existed, but nobody knew of it. The marketing for the movie was really bad. Like, it showed up, I think, like 2 weeks on television, like 1 or 2 commercials, that it was coming to theaters, and it just, you know, nobody paid any attention to it. Maybe they spent all the marketing on Batman Returns a year prior. I don't know. But, you know, hardly anybody knew about that movie. And we actually went to Albany. We went to Albany, New York, like the biggest theater in our area, to go to the movies. And I kid you not, I remember seeing 6 people in a theater that sat 200. And most of the people in there were teenagers. Like, I was like one of the only little kids there. It was devastating to me. So yeah, for me, the animated series was a massive escapism for me. And it really changed a lot of things for me. It helped me come out of my shell and be more social and, you know, try to find common ground with people in my school. And, you know, it was pretty intense. And it really devastated me when the show went off the air. What was interesting about that show is we moved away right as the show was still going on, but it was in its last legs. This was before it debuted, like with Superman the Animated Series. And we moved from the Albany, New York area all the way to some rando town in Illinois where my dad got another job as a minister that was going to pay more, and which meant that it was, you know, we weren't going to have to deal with SpaghettiOs and some other stuff. Like, I remember actually getting deli cold cuts for the first time since, you know, being in my grandparents' house, and like brand name cereal. So I was pretty happy. Like, we didn't have to deal with non-brand name stuff anymore. And, you know, he actually had his office in the house, too. So I actually got to spend time with my dad instead of my dad going off to work and being gone, like, all day until, like, 5 o'clock at night, and then seeing him for a little bit. And, you know, he'd ask me how school was, and school would just, like, break me down and cry. So we didn't have, like, really that father-son relationship until I moved to Illinois with them. And, like, my dad was literally home. Like, he took time to work at both his office at the church, but only in the morning, and he made sure that when he would pick us up from school, because I didn't have to ride the bus, because, you know, it was an even more shady place where we moved, So he didn't want me riding the bus because he didn't want me to get hurt or something. So he would pick us up, and then he would be home, like, the time that I was home. And, yeah, he would be working late. You know, he'd be in his office until about, like, 11 o'clock at night doing whatever, I don't know, writing sermons or researching or whatever, I don't know. But he was home. That was the important thing. And he also started to watch reruns of the animated series with me more. You know, like actually as it was coming on. But it wasn't long after that we moved to this place that the animated series was ending, and I felt like a part of me was going away. Like, I didn't want it to end. I remember researching on the internet back then that the animated series was actually peak ratings. It's not that the show was dying. It's the people behind the show just didn't want to do it anymore. And that, to me, I remember cursing them. You know, I was like really angry that the show was going to end because this has been an important part of my life for like 3 years. You know? It was a big deal. And they were just going to cut it off. And the reason why they were going to cut it off is because they felt like they didn't have any stories to tell anymore. Well, that was bull because, you know, not long after that, they introduced the New Adventures of Batman with the terrible animation. You know? It didn't compute to me. It didn't make any sense. So, one of the last episodes I saw as I was going into high school was The Lion and the Unicorn. And that was such a compelling moment for me because, like, it began with the Cat and Claw episode with Red Claw and Batman. And then The Lion and the Unicorn brought it full circle. It was very poetic. And The Lion and the Unicorn dealt with Alfred and his MI6 buddy being kidnapped, and it was up to Batman and Robin to go to England and save him from Red Claw. And it felt like the perfect end to that series, but at the same time, I didn't want it to end. I remember picking up a magazine 6 months after the show ended, and Bruce Timm and company and Paul Dini were doing an article. I don't remember the name of the magazine. It doesn't really matter. But they were talking about how they wanted to bring back the animated series and introduce Nightwing and Robin, Tim Drake, and more Batgirl and more Mr. Freeze and characters that they didn't really utilize as much because of the Bat embargo, which they joked about. And I later researched online what the Bat embargo was, which meant that Batman couldn't appear or characters while certain films were, you know, present in theaters, like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. That was the reason why Two-Face and the Riddler kind of disappeared from the animated series later years, because they were prominent in the 1995 Batman Forever movie. And the same reason why Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy didn't show up as much in some other Batman-related media is because they were, you know, involved with the film. And Warner Brothers didn't like to share properties between television and movie. And they're still kind of going back to that now, which is stupid, but I'm not really going to get into that can of worms. But I read the article, and I was very excited about the prospect of this. But then they announced that they were going to be releasing their brand new show that they were very excited about, Superman, the animated series. And I remember just being like, Superman? You're replacing Batman the Animated Series that ran on Fox for 3 years, 3 amazing years, it won Emmys, and you're replacing it with Superman that's going to run on a budget network called Kids WB? And I was like, okay. And I was, you know, I had some video games to fall back on after reading that article. I don't remember what the game was. It was something on N64, probably be 97, 98. I don't think it was Ocarina of Time. It would have been 96, 97, I believe. Because Batman came back to TV in the new Batman-Superman Adventures, I believe, either 1998, like the fall of 98, or it was the spring of 1999. I don't remember. But it was not the same show. Kevin Conroy was back, Lauren Lester was back, new Batgirl. And what made it very confusing when they brought this new animated show back, they released a new animated movie for the first time since the Mask of the Phantasm called Batman Sub-Zero, and it was beautiful. It was a direct-to-video animation with Mr. Freeze, Batman and Robin, and Batgirl, and Babs and Nightwing were a thing. Like, they were a couple. It was a well-done story. It was great. It was a beautiful end to Mr. Freeze. And then, not long after that, they had Mr. Freeze show up as a spider robot in the animated series. Which I refuse to call it the animated series. It's a new Batman Superman Adventures that the animated series ended after 85 episodes. This was the spin-off series that introduced more of the Bat family. And I still don't recognize it as part of the animated series because it was a completely different show. You know, they had the red skies. They had a different animated look to Batman and the characters. It basically looked like the Superman show, but with red skies. And it also looked like the animation was even more limited. The show was okay. My favorite thing about that show was being so excited to see a DVD release of Batman and Superman, which the World Finest team-up was amazing. I loved it. I loved Kevin's performance in it. I loved how they portrayed Batman because it felt like the comic book Batman and the animation Batman met at the same time in like this perfect, like, you know, fusion. And they got it. They understood how comic book Batman would interact with Superman as well as how the animated Superman, or the animated series Batman would mingle with Superman. It was perfect. Perfect. Down to the minute detail. It was just perfection. And, you know, getting the DVD was pretty cool. We had a VHS DVD combo in Illinois. And we had very few DVDs, but I do remember having that right when I was going into high school. And I probably have that somewhere here, like in my old collection, but it's scratched to who knows what. Like, that thing is no longer recognizable. Because I played it a lot. Because DVD was so much better than VHS. VHS, my grandma's tapes were not in the best condition when she recorded them. Because in order to reuse stuff, she would re-record over the VHS tapes. And I don't know if you know that, but if you re-record over a VHS tape, it starts to lose its quality. Sometimes it gets all wobbly or, like, not pixelated, but very, like, staticky. And the more you keep reusing, rewinding, and recording over those tapes, the worse it gets. What you were supposed to do is you record one time, and then it's in pristine condition. So the more she kept recording over stuff and sending it to me, sometimes you would see episodes of Power Rangers with, like, Batman the Animated Series on top, and then X-Men would randomly just, like, kind of come into focus, like, that. You'd see it for a few minutes, and it'd be like, now back to Batman. It would go all over the place, because, you know, she was a penny pincher. So she just kind of liked to, you know, typical New York grandma, you know? That's why I was so happy to have cable at one point, because I didn't have to worry about, like, getting this huge box of tapes that may or may not contain the full episodes. Sometimes I would see, like, some Portuguese drama or, you know, some type of, like, soap opera in between, like, an episode of Batman or Power Rangers, and it was very jarring sometimes, because you'd be getting into it and all of a sudden see, like, some Portuguese person coming up on the screen and screaming you know, something in Portuguese when you're watching, like, this soap opera thing, and then it would automatically just go back to the show you were watching. It was weird. Of course, I came from a Portuguese family, so, you know, she would record whatever Portuguese or Spanish stuff she could, and like I said, she would reuse tapes, so anyway, so the New Adventure show was okay. Around that time, I remember borrowing a friend's Sega Saturn and playing a Batman game that had an episode of the animated series on it, which later became known on the internet as the Lost Episode. The Adventures of Batman and Robin on the, you know, the either Sega CD or Sega Saturn. I don't remember. But the episode was okay. You could tell that Kevin and company thought they were recording an episode of the show. It was probably an ensemble cast, you know, like everybody playing off each other in a big room, recording, and, you know, all that stuff. And they did an okay job with the voiceover and stuff like that. The animation was bad. It was very stiff and whatever. But the game was really hard to play. It was like one of those racing games where it was not QuickTime event, but maybe early QuickTime event. Like, I don't remember what that term is called. But the driving game was pretty much all it was. It wasn't like you actually got to play as Batman. It wasn't like the awesome Super Nintendo Batman game for the animated series, or the like Batman and Robin Genesis thing. It had a cool look to it, but it just meh. But it was cool for me to hear Kevin voicing his character in the video game, along with most of the alumni from the show. That was really awesome to see. Also, I got my dad got a computer that he made in like around 96, and there was a Batman and Robin activity center thing, which was really weird. But Kevin and a bunch of people from the show reprised their role, and it was, just a really, I don't know, it was basically like a shareware game. I can't even tell you what it was about. I think it was like one of those learning games. I just wanted it because it was Batman, and I had just had dental surgery. So, like, it gave me something to kind of, like, think about something that wasn't painful. So, whenever, because video games were expensive, but PC games were cheap, so you never knew what you were getting with PC games. But, yeah, I do remember that, and I remember Batman and Robin Cartoon Maker, which did not have Kevin Conroy in it, but it was weird nonetheless. So, 1999, I was starting high school, I believe, and Batman Beyond came out. And I remember at the time I was kind of like, wow, this is really different. It was cool to see Batman around, and to hear Kevin like playing this older guy. Like, I was like, wow, how old is the dude who plays Batman? Because I didn't know anything about voice actors. I was going into high school and stuff like that. I didn't really spend a lot of time looking up things on the internet, except for cheat sheets to write down for video games that were kicking my butt. Or, whenever I got a chance, I would take my hand at writing GameFAQs stuff, or whatever GameFAQs used to be called back in 1999, early 2000. So, I wasn't really going out of my way to learn who was voicing the characters, but I was thrilled to hear that the guy who played Batman was reprising his role. Like, you could hear it when you watched it. It was like, oh, okay, so this new Batman show, it's like Batman's in the future. Because I didn't see the opening of the show. A buddy of mine told me that there was going to be a new Batman show on Kids WB. And I was like, oh yeah, well, I love the animated series. Like, I'd love to see what, a Batman in the, in his golden years would be like. And I remember tuning into it, and I was like a minute late, and Batman was having a heart attack. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And even as a teenager, I was compelled to watch, like, this can't be good. It's like they're gonna kill off my favorite superhero. Like, why? So I watched Batman have a heart attack, and he picked up a gun, and Kevin's performance just broke me. It was like, out of desperation, he, picked up the gun and he pointed it at this thug, and, I really thought he was going to pull the trigger. Like, I really thought that Batman was going to do whatever he could to preserve his own life. Like, that's the desperation you felt in that scene. It was handled so well. And then immediately afterwards, when he quits being Batman, it was just kind of like, whoa, where are they going with this? And then I remember I was watching the show when they introduced Terry McGinnis, and I heard the guy's voice, and I was like, wait a second. That sounds like Corey Matthews' brother from Boy Meets World. And I think Batman Beyond is what made me start to kind of, like, look up voice actors to see who's and what a little bit, like what actors playing what, because to me it was a little weird to hear, older brother from Boy Meets World as Batman. But eventually Terry grew on me, but I didn't like him right away. The only reason I watched the show in the beginning, like the first, like, probably 6 episodes, is because I really liked what they did with older Batman. I liked how he was grumpy and he was kind of funny. And I liked that he kind of became like the Oracle role in the show. You know? And Terry, to me, he felt kind of like this annoying punk that it took time for me to really get to like the character. It was just kind of like, yeah, okay. You know, this is teenage Batman. I don't know how I feel like. I even said back then, I was like, you know what? It feels like they're trying to make Batman Spider-Man. That's what it felt like. It's like they're trying too hard to make a character who has no superpowers to become a superpowered superhero. Because Terry had the ability to fly. Terry had the ability to turn invisible. Terry had somewhat super strength. Terry had batarangs that could appear out of, like, his wrists. And he also, like, could do other things that the Batman that I grew up with couldn't do. So to me, it felt like they were trying to turn Batman into from a vigilante hero to a superhero with powers and abilities that normal people don't have. And sometimes it was like, I don't know, it wasn't all that interesting for me to do. It was like kind of like, okay. But eventually, you know, Terry's relationship with his family and his girlfriend and Bruce, it really made me a fan of the show. Like, the voice acting was superb, even though it wasn't the animated series, but it felt like a continuation of that. So eventually I got on board with that. The next big thing that happened with Kevin Conroy was he reprised his role for a prequel movie and also like sequel movie to the show called Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. And I actually bought the DVD for that. That was another one of my first DVDs that I ever owned. And I still have it. It says either PG-13 or unrated version. I don't remember. Because the version I have, Joker gets shot in the chest instead of being electrocuted. So that was pretty shocking to me to see that happen. And I was like, well, wait a second. This is a direct-to video animation, so I guess that they don't have the same restrictions as television. You know, it was pretty intense. It was like, whoa. But I really liked the story, and it was... I felt like it was fitting for what happened to Batman and Joker's character at the time, and I liked how Kevin played two different roles in that movie. He was younger Batman, and he also was older, jaded Batman. And the mystery involved with that was handled pretty well, to be honest. And it's one of my favorite animated Batman movies. Like, it's great. I really like it. And if people have never seen that movie and you've never seen Batman Beyond, I challenge you to take a look at that film because it's pretty awesome. Let's see. So, in 2001, right when I was going into college, you had two Batman video games come out that Kevin Conroy has no knowledge of that he did, but he did do them. It's Gotham City Racers on PlayStation, and basically the Batman Vengeance by Ubisoft. And out of both those games, only one of them was good. And I got to play like Batman Vengeance right when I was like home from college for a little bit, because I attended college in the spring of 2001, I believe, or like it was like February or March of 2001. I went and moved back to New York by myself, and I was living in a dorm, and I stayed at that school until March of 2002. And I left because, like, I was going through something very bad at college. I was being tormented by... I don't even know how to explain this. A guy who... he was a very messed up guy who liked to put his junk in my face. And found it funny. So he abused me in college, and I told my dorm about it, and the school didn't do anything about it, so eventually I got sick of it and I quit college. I left Albany and I went back to Illinois. And it was... I had to leave school because I almost got into a fight with him, and I probably would have killed him if I was given the chance. Like, he was abusing me psychologically and messing with me and all kinds of stuff, and I was losing it. And I was a hothead in high school, so, like, I didn't care that the guy was going into the Marine Corps either. Like, I wanted him dead. Numerous occasions, so I, removed myself from the situation by flunking out of college, because you can't stay in college if, you can't get the grades. So if my dad and my family wasn't going to pull me out of school, I found a way of quitting college myself. So, yeah, that happened. But I do remember once I came home, right around, I think it was after Christmas or whatever, that I really got into more of the new video games that Kevin was in, and also got introduced to, I believe, the Justice League show had started up around there too. So it was kind of cool to go from hearing Kevin in video games to having him back on TV again. And I feel like Justice League kind of like helped me out like psychologically, because I was dealing with a lot of anger, and I didn't have that, what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't really have like a lot of good things going on in my, late teens, like 18, 19 years old. I was also like dealing with some medical related stuff. I was having ulcers quite a bit. I don't know if it was left over from college or if it was, anxiety, not knowing where I was going to go to school or something like that. But by the time I was like 18, 17 years old, I started getting ulcers, like hardcore. Like, literally like throwing up blood and all kinds of stuff. It was bad. And I had like all this tension and no release for it. I didn't have anything to look forward to as much. Sure, there were new games and stuff that came out, but there was nothing that really gathered my attention the way that a lot of stuff did when I was a kid. Like, I was becoming an adult, or I was an adult, and I didn't have that escapism anymore. I didn't have that place where, like, I had something to look forward to, like something interesting was going to happen. College sucked. My dad always told me college was going to be great. I had probably the most horrible college experience that I ever had, and to this day I wish it never happened. Like, I wish I never went to school in New York and never lived in a dorm, and that, I left and didn't try to, stick around to please my parents. I wish that as soon as that stuff happened, like the first day or second day that this creep was doing stuff, that I, left school right away. I did get some closure to that, though, because that person did become a Marine, and he fought in Iraq and died. And when I heard the news, I laughed, because it couldn't have happened to a better guy. So, but I didn't get that closure until like 2003, 2004. So I was a very angry and sad, and just like I couldn't really talk to people about it. I thought about going to counseling and stuff like that, but that was back when people were pressuring you. Like, if something happened to you in school, they would say, well, you're repressing something because this is how you are. Or, even though I was straight and stuff like that, if you would have gone and gotten help, they would have convinced you that you were something else. So I didn't want to deal with any psychobabble or things like that. So I found ways of dealing with my own, I guess, frustrations and rage from adults not actually doing what adults do. They're supposed to help people. I was mad at the school system. I was mad at everybody for not actually doing their jobs. So I buried myself in a lot of work. Started working at radio stations, Really researched more about voice actors and things like that. I thought about going into stuff in Chicago. They had like readings for certain things because my family lived near Chicago. And it never worked out, though. Like, I thought I needed to be a radio DJ first to get into, like, doing radio commercials, and it was kind of the opposite. I was supposed to start with jingles and then go and do other stuff. But it didn't happen that way. So I was just kind of like, okay, great. How's that going to work? So I did the radio thing on the side, and it was fun. You know, I worked okay. You know, it was interesting. So what was great, though, is the Justice League show came out, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Like, it really was. And it gave me something to look forward to, because it was like, wait a second, this is the same people behind the animated series and Superman and Batman Beyond. But this is different. This doesn't feel like it's catered to younger audiences. Like, this feels more mature. This feels like people that grew up with the show. You know, there's more action, there's more drama, there's more compelling characters, there's stakes. The first episode of Justice League, or the second one, a lot of people thought Batman died. I remember going to whatever forum sites we had back in 2001, I don't remember, and typing with other Batman fans, and we're trying to figure out if Batman lived or died, because nobody knew. Like, the new character, Martian Manhunter, made you think that Kevin Conroy, Batman, was dead. Like, he showed up in, like, one episode to kind of, like, you know, show people, hey, this is a new, serious, high-stakes show. And, you know, people are scrambling on the internet to find out what was going on. And then, of course, you know, he shows up in the next episode, and Martian Manhunter was hiding his aura or whatever from detection. And at that point, I was like, wow, this is a really different story. I started to research more about comic books and all kinds of stuff. And it was, I don't know, it felt like going home a little bit. Like, because it was a familiar part of your childhood, right? But it was also like a part of your adult life now. And it was something new. It wasn't something that you had to go back and rewatch or relive or, you know, remember. It was something new that has happened all these years later after everything else was canceled. Or, not canceled, but ended. And it was good. Now, Batman wasn't in every episode, but I would still argue with people that the episodes that Batman appeared in were some of the best episodes of Justice League. Justice League had some great episodes, don't get me wrong. But the ones that Batman showed up in were some of the best of Justice League. And Kevin's performances in them was just, I don't know. It really made me, like, dive back into the character and be like, you know what? As a kid, I was crazy and I wrote outlines for episodes. I ended up doing tons of stuff on the internet for Justice League. Like, I wanted to make a fan site. That's how obsessed I was as, like, a 19-year-old or 20-year-old. I wanted, you know, and I was devastated to learn that there were already fan sites for the show already. And it was like, what? Because that's what I want to do. I remember I picked up a program to learn how to do HTML and JavaScript and stuff like that. And I wanted to make a fan site for Batman the Animated Series and chronological order, going from Batman the Animated Series all the way to Justice League, and then doing like episode synopsises and stuff like that. And of course it never happened. I ended up following a bunch of those sites, and I remember reaching out to some of them and asking them if I could write for them or if I could do some synopsises, because I thought I was pretty good at it. Never happened. What ended up happening, though, is my passion for that opened up opportunities in the gaming field. And I ended up, like, becoming a regular on GameFAQs under, like, fake pen names, making, like, reviews for games that I was playing, and the reviews were okay. So if it wasn't for Justice League and my passion for wanting to be a part of like online communities and you know, reevaluating my life and stuff like that, I wouldn't have I don't think I would have really gotten into the writing aspect of what my field was, because I was just like so energized by a lot of these stories in the first like 12 episodes of Justice League, or 6 episodes. I don't remember how many episodes there was before stuff, which I don't want to get into. But yeah, Justice League was a huge eye opener for me. In 2003 was a really big year for me. I ended up meeting Amber, which she just like completely opened up my world in ways that I still have no idea how she did it. Like, she took me out of the darkness and showed me that life could be fun, because I hated life. Like, I had a sucky childhood outside of, television and, my relationship with my dad, and my grandparents. Like, my school life all the way from grade school all the way through college sucked. I buried myself in jobs. I played tons of video games. I wrote video game reviews for things that I wasn't being paid for. And I didn't have a tether to reality outside of the internet. It was pretty bad. Almost to the point where my dad almost like took my computer away because he thought that, I would never leave my room. Or like, he didn't see me outside of like coming back from work late at night and, hearing me type on the computer like until the wee hours of the morning. My insomnia related stuff happened because I was always up really late at night, and I just got accustomed to it because I was writing and I was, compiling lists of my comics, or, writing Batman fan fiction and writing video game reviews and doing all kinds of stuff. Like, I mean, I wasn't doing drugs and I wasn't doing anything illegal. So, I'd say that I wasn't doing anything bad. But at the same time, it wasn't the healthiest thing I could have done probably. But I feel like putting my energy into something that was positive and, eventually led into a career. But I had no idea that it was going to lead into a career. I was just blowing off steam. Like, I did not have a very successful dating life. When I came back from Word of Life, I didn't have a great high school experience with dating either, but I'm not going to get into that story. I will just give you a snippet version. I basically told this girl that I liked because we had a clash in religious beliefs, and she was really into me, and I was like an oblivious anime guy. And we were riding the bus together, and everything was clicking. Everything was going really well. And she was a very well-known, popular girl. Very sweet. Until ADD Kwing said something that ruined my high school career forever. I was walking her home being an old gentleman, and I told her my dad was a minister, and she said her dad was a bishop of this church. And then she told me what, faith she had, and I remember looking up what that was and what that was referred to normally by people. It was a cult, and I made some offhand remark because I thought it was funny, and I hurt her feelings a lot, and then she basically had people torture me in high school because of it, like all 3 years. It got so bad that I actually had to graduate high school early. Like, I doubled up on all kinds of stuff because I just couldn't deal with all the, things that were going on at high school at the time, because high school wasn't fun. High school was like a prison that I had to go to. So I figured, I'd talk to the warden, which was the principal at the time, and be like, how many credits do I need to get out of this dump? And they said, do this and this, and, you should be enough to get out of here. Because they didn't want me there anyway, because I was a troublemaker. I had to be a troublemaker just to survive, though. It was like, basically hell. And I feel like a lot of that stems back to burning bridges with this girl who, you know, probably wasn't as sweet as I thought she was because she didn't handle what I said very well. Even if it was a jerky thing for me to say, I don't think it warranted that type of reaction, you know? Mean cheerleader, like, for revenge type scenario. So, yeah, my dating life was not very good. I had rumors spread about me. You know, it was not successful. So, when I ran into Amber in 2003, I thought that she knew who I was because I came back to the town that I'd been ostracized from. You know, it was basically love at first sight, and I finally got that puppy dog, you know, romance from Saved by the Bell with Zach and Kelly. And, you know, it was really nice. And it's still, you know, I married my college sweetheart. She convinced me to go back to college, actually. I was never going to go back to school. So, you know, I had a horrible experience in New York in the Albany area. And I ended up going to community school, or community college, which, I know, community college. But I stuck it out for a while, but I had a lot of problems because I wasn't really good at the field that I chose for college, and I couldn't afford... Back then, you couldn't change what your majors were without, you know, paying money and doing other things. I don't know if that's still the same now. Maybe they've, like, been more lenient. But, like, when I chose the wrong field, I couldn't pass the courses that I was in, so I ended up just stopped going to classes, and they kicked me out of school eventually because I couldn't handle it. Like, I thought that graphic artist back then meant what graphic artist is today. Like, I assumed it would be like they teach me how to use computers and how to draw on computers, and no, that wasn't it. They put me through these super advanced, like, drawing classes where my art teacher was always yelling at me because I couldn't draw. So, like, they would come in with, like, this fruit, and they'd expect you to, like, be able to draw it exactly how the fruit is, and she'd always be hovering over me, and she'd be like, no, this is terrible. She's like, where did you learn to draw? It's like, I can't draw. I thought I was going to make stuff on the computer. And I only had one computer class that I did really well in, with website design and stuff like that. But, you know, back then, 2003 through 2004, you couldn't really... College didn't work that way. So I had to quit. And even today, I have no college degree. I have almost finished certificates and certain things, but I'm a college dropout. You know, I'm not ashamed of it. It didn't work for me. I tried. Would I ever go back? No, I hate school. So, you know, it was pretty cool. Other things that were happening in my life anyway. So, anyway, between 2004, 2006, Amber and I really hit it off well. We also found common ground with the Justice League show. She would come over to my house, and sometimes after a date, we would watch Justice League. And she loved it. In fact, it's a show that really connects us. Like, that show was so big a part of me. I am such a geek. Our honeymoon, we went to Six Flags, New England, right around the time of the Batman stunt show and the opening of the Hall of Justice. I asked her, like, because we were very, very young, 22, 21, couldn't really afford anything. You know, we didn't elope. We had a small wedding. It was very, very nice. But it was, very poor wedding. And we didn't care about that. We didn't care about material things. We wanted to be happy. We loved each other. We were going to spend the rest of our lives together. That's what we did. But, we were trying to plan out where we were going to go for our honeymoon. And I don't know why she asked me. She's like, what do you really want to go? It says, well, I want to do something that isn't done. And she's like, what is that? I said, I'd like to go to a theme park with you. I think it would be kind of cool. Like, we could, theme park's not that expensive. And, we can spend time walking around the park, holding hands, and, maybe window shopping or picking up a few souvenirs. And, You know, the Justice League Hall of Justice thing is there, and we could get a nice hotel, you know, and the hotel would be in the same town as that, and, you know, the hotel would be the most expensive thing, and we could get, like, 3-day passes to Six Flags. And that's what we did. The hotel was the most expensive part of the trip, and we had a blast at Six Flags. It's one of my greatest memories of, like, the first year we were married, because I was sick after that. I had problems come back, and I was hospitalized off and on, because I can't tell you what else happened in 2004, but I almost died, and I got very sick because of it. So, yeah, I was still experiencing things. So I was in and out of the hospital from 2005 through 2004 until about 2007, which we racked up a lot of medical debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was very hard for a young married couple. I still don't know how we survived. I think the only way we survived was God. There's no other way. Like, we had crushing debt, we had our relationship, and that was about it. Like, we didn't have anything. We couldn't afford cable. It was almost back to how I was, like, if we didn't have multiple jobs, Amber and I had 3 jobs each. Even when I was sick, I still tried to work wherever I could. Eventually, I get fired because they said I wasn't reliable. Because I wasn't. I was sick. I'd pass out at work sometimes. I had problems like carrying things, and, you know, I tried to push myself, but it didn't work out very well. And Amber was working 3 jobs. She was a receptionist. She worked at a orthodontist office. Plus, she sold furniture on the side, like at a furniture company. So we were very busy. The only time we really saw each other before YouTube was maybe like 2 hours a day, like before we, drove to work or something. We shared a car, and we worked. Thankfully, we worked in the same mall, so most of our jobs were in that mall. And then we would get to come home, have dinner, whatever dinner was, and watch Justice League. And that was a big deal for us. Even after Justice League went off the air, we bought together the Justice League DVD box, like the first season, and just rewatched it over and over again. And also we had the Batman animated series, like Volume 1 and 2 on DVD, which we told each other that it would be kind of like the same cost as if we got cable or something like that, and we could have the entire show and we could watch it whenever we wanted. Maybe it was more, maybe it was less, I don't know, but that's what we convinced ourselves of. So yeah, that the Justice League had a huge grip on our lives. Like, it was a big thing for Amber and I. It was a thing of comfort. It was a thing of familiarity for me because of Kevin's voice as Batman. And, she was a big Superman fan, so she was always happy with that kind of stuff. And I would tease her for Superman. But I started my YouTube thing in 2007, and more and more Batman stuff was changing as, my YouTube career was kind of starting up. And I was also finally starting to get paid on the side for doing game journalism. Not very much, but it was something. I was able to help with rent, and I felt a lot better, and I started to not go in and out of the hospital anymore because I actually had like some type of not tethered to my life, but I felt like my life had meaning again. Like, I wasn't just this, sickly husband that my wife was taking care of, and, always thinking that I was near death. I was very underweight, and, I still don't know how I survived. But, I'm still here. But it was hell. But right around 2007, YouTube channel really started to pick up. 2008, Batman Gotham Knights came out, and I was very excited because I got an early press copy of that. Even though I was a game journalist, the company I worked for got an early copy of it, and I got to see it before anybody else, and it was really cool. What was so interesting about that was learning the history behind that. And this really also kind of cemented my journey to doing lore stuff, is like learning the behind-the-scenes stuff of some of these movies was really fascinating to me. I really liked the Batman Gotham Knights movie because I found out from information I had from, I don't remember, somebody who worked for one of the companies I was doing game journalist stuff for, because they had a film department. And they said that originally they planned on having Christian Bale voice Batman in this Gotham Knights anime movie project, because like it was supposed to be a continuation of Bale's universe. Like this was the movie that was supposed to happen in between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And so honestly, it would make sense that Bale would be a part of that project. And, you know, Bale was probably open to it because he recorded the video game, the 2005 Batman Begins video game. And also he was working on that Batman video game that was canceled for The Dark Knight that Commissioner Gordon talked about, like in an interview on like some late night show. There was a Batman game that was in development that was based on The Dark Knight, and it had a gliding cape feature, and it had like Christian Bale was attached, Morgan Freeman, all that other stuff. But the game got canceled. It might have been because of Heath Ledger's death. Nobody knows. But the only existence of that game that the Commissioner Gordon guy knows is that, you know, they came in, they did a little bit of voice stuff. It was planned to come out in 2007 or 2008 before the movie, and then it just kind of disappeared. I think that he saw like early things of Batman Arkham Asylum and assumed that the game that they were making was the, you know, was his game. Or maybe he saw early drafts or like gameplay footage of Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which also ended up kind of becoming the 2009 game, Arkham Asylum. But no one really knows because, you know, he's an actor and, you know, no one to this day can really say heads or tails if the Dark Knight video game existed or not, or if people were just seeing like a very early alpha of Arkham Asylum. I personally have no idea either. I like to think maybe a Dark Knight game was in development because they were working on the Batman Begins game and they had the cast reprise their role and do that, or it was something completely different. But anyway, back to the Gotham Knights thing. So Kevin Conroy was so talented in that movie that he easily won the part. What made Batman Gotham Knights 2008 movie so interesting is that the film itself was multiple takes on the character, done by, at the time, 5 of the most famous Japanese anime directors, each one with their own unique style, feel, and like soul to the, you know, the mini short or whatever, mini movie. And what was awesome about this is even though these were 5 different stories, they all felt connected and like they worked in the Bale universe. But also at the same time, they could stand alone as their own Elseworld story. And what Kevin did with the role is each time he played Batman Bruce Wayne, he played a different version of Batman Bruce Wayne. A lighter version in one for Bruce Wayne. A more darker, terrifying, menacing version of Batman. A more compassionate, you know, caring Batman for his fellow human beings. Like not wanting to hurt people and only risk his own life, no one else's. Each time he played Batman in that movie, he brought his A game. And I challenge people, if you've not seen that movie will really just open up your eyes how talented Kevin was as Batman. You can't watch that movie and just be like, oh, he's using the same voice every single time. No, he's not. His Bruce Wayne has a lighter tone to it in one like storyline. Then his Bruce Wayne has like more of a caring or kind of like, you know, sad Bruce Wayne voice. Or an injured Bruce Wayne voice, like for when he's near death in one of the, you know, things and Alfred has to patch him up. Or when he's using his Batman voice as Bruce Wayne. He changes his performance based on what type of anime project he was working on. And it wasn't just like he recorded the voice like he did for animated series, where it was like in this kind of like ensemble cast thing. He literally dubbed the voice. Like they dubbed it because it was animated in Japan, and then they brought it back to the States, and he did it as like probably one of the best anime dubs ever. It wasn't done on his lips, from what I've heard. Like, it was, he watched it, and then he and the cast did it like they were recording an anime. That's why there's so many anime people attached to that project, like the dub version. And Kevin and like one other person are like the only really like voice actors that were not anime actors that worked on that movie. But if you watch it, you're kind of like, wow, this feels like, you know, a Kevin Conroy Batman movie. And as far as I know, this was the first time that he actually stepped out of the DC animated universe, and he went into a brand new multiverse Batman world. And you could argue that each one of those mini movies or mini episodes is its own, you know, separate Batman, but it's still voiced by Kevin Conroy. But this is what changed Kevin's career as Batman, if I'm being completely honest. 2008. 2009 was Arkham, done by Rocksteady and Eidos, known for the Tomb Raider thing. And what a lot of people don't understand about Arkham Asylum is Arkham Asylum was not a game that was set in stone as, you know, planning for a trilogy or planning for, you know, more games than Arkham Asylum. Arkham Asylum was a celebration, if I'm not mistaken, on celebrating Batman's 70 years of existence. And it compiled ideas from the animated series because of Paul Dini, who wrote the script, as well as it encompassed famous stories and characters from the comic books, previous Batman video games, and it all combined for a beautiful tribute. On top of that beautiful tribute, you brought back three major alumni from the animated series, Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and of course, Kevin Conroy as Batman. And they made S-tier stuff with that. The only thing that I don't like about the Arkham story that Paul Dini did is I don't like Joker Bane at the end of the game. I feel like that was kind of like... it just didn't work. It made it too video gamey, whereas before it was like this kind of thrilling drama, like kids who grew up with Batman the Animated Series and adults who were coming of age for the Justice League show. This was like the next stage of adulthood. Like, this was as close to an R-rated Batman movie that you were going to get with these characters. But it was handled in such a way that was tasteful. You know, it wasn't like... Usually when you go full, like, mature rated stuff, like, they go crazy with the language and, you know, the gore and just the shock value. It was a mature story, but at the same time, it worked for the setting that they created it. And the game got a T rating, from what I remember. But they were planning on it being an M-rated game. You know? So they had to tone some stuff down. But the game just, like, surprised everybody. And once again, Kevin came back, and he voiced Batman. And it gave a nuance to the character. Like, people played that, and they were like, oh my gosh, it's the animated Batman. But is this really how the animated Batman would act in this scenario? And then, for a lot of people, Arkham Batman became pinnacle Batman. Like, animated series Batman was the benchmark, right? He was the jumping off point for the Batman character. And Justice League cemented that. But then Arkham Batman just, like, kicked open the doors even wider and showed not only the range that Kevin had as a performer, but his understanding for the character of Batman as well. It was just, like, otherworldly, in a sense. And it changed everything. Also, because of Kevin voicing the Gotham Knights, you know, anime Batman, which was his first multiverse role. Because remember, he only played DC animated Batman from 1992 until 2006. Right? So, 2008, he changed how he did Batman. So that was his first multiverse role. His second multiverse role was Arkham Asylum game. His third was in Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. Now, what was so good about Superman, Batman, Public Enemies? It was the first time that Batman and Superman's friendship was really, like, put in the spotlight. You would get little teases of it in the Justice League show. Like, very briefly when they would team up. But they didn't always team up. This was a very interesting story that was taken right from the pages of DC Comics, when DC Comics was really good, of the Public Enemy storyline, where Superman is really wrestling with how he's supposed to deal with Lex Luthor as President of the United States. You know? Superman's arch nemesis is the leader of the free world, and the only friend that he really has to confide in his, like, speculation that Lex is still a bad guy, and the only person that really trusts him is Batman. And Batman and Superman go through, like, this horrible ordeal together. Like, they both nearly get killed by Metallo. Superman gets shot with a kryptonite bullet, and Metallo beats the snot out of Batman, because Batman's just an ordinary guy, you know? And when you watch that movie, Kevin makes you feel like Batman is in mortal danger. Like, you see him limping around and, you know, nursing his wounds, and he's just not having a great day. And they're, you know, mucking around the sewers of Gotham trying to find where the Batcave is, and you literally see Kevin's Batman stumble in the water, you know, because he's probably got several broken ribs and stuff like that. And what's amazing is you can actually feel the performance of this character, you know, through Kevin. Like, Kevin makes you feel like, you know, this is a very different Batman. This is a Batman that we're not accustomed to seeing. And he feels like, you know, a more adult Batman, too, because he's a Batman just like Arkham that swears and stuff. But also, he has a lightness to him. He has a friendship with Superman that really hasn't been showcased to this degree before. And the movie's fantastic. You know, it's what I really wanted BVS to be. I really wanted that cool buddy movie, you know, with two best friends who fight crime together and, you know, show that even though they have differences between light and dark, that they're both heroes that respect each other for their differences of how they deal with, you know, the criminal element. And how they both, like, work off of each other. You know, that work respect that you have from a colleague that you really, you know, not necessarily admire, but one that you get, you know, and you both work really well together. It's a great partnership. That's what that movie was. Another great thing about that movie is it looked just like the comic book it was based on. Not like that garbage we got with, you know, the Hush movie, where they used the same old New 52 animation style when incorporating what was supposed to be an Elseworlds movie. This was a time where DC Animation would literally make movies that mirrored the awesome look of these comic books. So I still feel like Jim Lee and company was robbed when Hush did not incorporate the beautiful artwork of Hush. Instead of, like, just doing the same old safe DC New 52 animation style that became very apparent after, like, 2013, 2014. This was a really cool time to be a Batman fan. As well as it is one of my favorite Batman movies. Like, I hope I get to see someday a live-action friendship between Batman and Superman handled with that much respect, that much fun, and that much excitement. And, of course, that was Kevin Conroy's third performance as a multiverse Batman. His next time as a multiverse Batman appeared in the show Batman Brave and the Bold, where he did some stuff as the Batman of Zur-En-Augh. Now, I can't remember the exact date when that happened. I might be jumping around, but Kevin reprised his role in that show a couple times to play, like, one-off characters like Phantom Stranger and things like that. But he did appear in the show as the Batman of Zur-En-Augh, which is basically a alien Batman that Diedrich Batter's Batman meets, and he has a guest appearance, but it's throughout the entire episode, and it's a great episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of Batman Brave and the Bold, next to Chill of the Night, which is the origin of Batman, where both Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy are in that, playing the Spectre and Phantom Stranger. So those are really good. I don't want to spoil too much of those because I would really like you guys to watch that sometime. Also in 2010, we get another multiverse Batman. His fourth portrayal of a multiverse, different version of Batman, another Elseworlds, on the popular Superman Batman Apocalypse comic book film adaptation, where Batman actually defeats Darkseid with his brilliant mind. And Kevin actually made me think when I was watching the movie that he was going to blow up Apocalypse after stealing Darkseid's Wi-Fi password, essentially, and, you know, telling Darkseid that if he doesn't let Supergirl go, who he didn't even really like Supergirl that much in the movie. Like, Supergirl was a pest. She was annoying, and, you know, Batman showed that even though he didn't really like the girl very much, he still cared about, you know, what Superman and other heroes thought of her because, you know, she was Superman's cousin. And even though things got off to a rocky start with them, he still went out of his way to go to Apocalypse, risk his own life, and then he stood up against a god, stole his Wi-Fi password, and bartered her freedom, knowing that he very well could die. That just shows the love that Batman has for his fellow man, and in this case, an alien, who he doesn't even really know that well. There's some time skips and stuff involved in that movie that can be a little, you know, jarring, but for the most part, it's a pretty solid retelling of that comic book, and I did like it. And that was another time that Batman, Kevin, reprised his role as a multiverse Batman. 2011 was a great year for Kevin Conroy's role as Batman because he redefined the role again in different ways. He did DC Universe Online, which was not really a Batman game per se, but Batman was in it. But he played the role of a character that was the mentor figure for someone who was a gadget hero, meaning someone that used gadgets. And you would basically get to work alongside Batman. He would come and hang out with you, but you didn't get to play as him, which is the only reason I bought DC Universe Online, full disclosure, is because I thought that it was a PC game, like a, you know, a MOBA game or like a World of Warcraft game where I could play as Batman and I could hear Kevin Conroy like do like this really cool storyline and stuff like that. Of course, that wasn't the case, and DC Universe Online disappointed me on numerous occasions. But, you know, it was cool to hear Kevin do that, and I did take the path where I was a gadget hero so I could hang out in the Batcave, could hear Kevin talk, and I played his story various times. And over the years, they've added other stories for DC Universe Online with Batman, and he had more of his story come out, like when Lex Luthor and Nightwing and him were dealing with an invasion from Brainiac in the future, and Lex Luthor tricks both Batman and Nightwing, and Nightwing is a metahuman, and Nightwing gets killed in front of Batman, who is like this grizzly, older, like 60s or 70s age Batman. So basically, Kevin is doing kind of like a version of his Batman Beyond Bruce Wayne voice. And then, of course, you go back to when Lex Luthor goes back in time, using Batman's time machine in the Batcave. Kevin is back to playing himself as a more younger, like 30s or 40s Batman. And the fact that he could switch between those different types of performances, between older Batman and younger Batman, is just like, it shows not only his range, but his talent as a voice actor, and also his familiarity with how well he portrayed Batman. I don't think any other actor could have really done that as well. 2011 was also Batman Arkham City, which I can't praise that enough. I am actually wearing the Arkham City costume. Once again, Paul Dini came back. Some of the animated series alumni returned, but Arlene Sorkin had retired after Arkham Asylum, and Tara Strong became Harley Quinn. The story was phenomenal, the gameplay was phenomenal, and Kevin was amazing in that because he played a very vulnerable Batman in that one. In Arkham Asylum, he played a Batman that was on a mission to stop the Joker no matter the cost. And in Arkham City, it was a race against time because he had been poisoned by the Joker. And it wasn't a race necessarily to save his own hide. He didn't want Gotham to breathe its last breath, so he was going out of his way to find a cure, even at the own destruction of himself. Like, that showed another layer of the Batman onion from Kevin Conroy that we had never seen before. And it was also a story where Batman had to deal with consequences for his actions as well, because his girlfriend was killed. Like, Talia, which had a lame death in the movie, had severe consequences for being related to Batman in a sense. And Joker made Batman pay for it. And Kevin's performance, like, showed you how broken up he was about it. When Batman, you don't really get to see Batman be emotional, you know? So that was really interesting to see, and the story just, like, encapsulated so many people. He also did Batman Arkham City Lockdown that year, which was okay. It was a mobile game, so, I mean, you know, once again, he reprised his role as Arkham Batman. It has a very different storyline that kind of follows some aspects of the Batman and Robin movie, where Robin is kind of infatuated with Poison Ivy, and Batman has to save Robin. It's really weird, but they also did that in a comic book in the 90s, where Robin, Dick Grayson, in the animated universe was turned into Harley and Ivy's, like, plaything. And, yeah, that's kind of where they did that. Of course, Batman freed Robin from Poison Ivy's spore control or something, but it was weird to see that storyline kind of come back with Tim Drake. So, meh. That happened. But, I mean, I guess it was a solid mobile game, but it just basically sounded like Arkham Batman. So, 2012, we had another Justice League movie with Kevin Conroy based on the famous Justice League comic, The Tower of Babel. Amazing movie. Kevin basically is the villain of the film and also the hero of the film. Like, he puts the Justice League in danger and he saves them. That movie showed that why it's important to have checks and balances against the Justice League, and also why Batman will never change how he is, because even though the Justice League is his friends, you know, sometimes when your friends are gods, you have to have means of taking them down for the betterment of mankind. It's a, you know, very awesome movie, but it's also a sad outcome what happens to Batman at the end. Basically quits the Justice League, and Kevin sells that movie. Like, it's one of my favorite Batman performances in a animated film, and it's one of my favorite animated Batman characters outside of, you know, the DC or the Bruce Timm universe. It really feels like that movie could have been a Bruce Timm movie. I don't know if it was, because it came out later. It came out in 2012. But it's a great film, and I actually like that film more than Flashpoint Paradox, which was Kevin Conroy's next stint as Batman, which came out the same year as more DC Universe Online Batman stuff, and of course the Injustice game. So because of us, the fans, Kevin continued to get work, like a lot of work, and they brought him back to do the voice of Batman in a Mortal Kombat style fighting game that didn't have fatalities in it, but it was a really fun DC fighting game. In this game, Batman, Kevin Conroy played two different versions of himself. He played a jaded, war-torn, weary, depressed, broken regime Batman, and then he played a younger, alternate version of himself, where he was a very optimistic Avenger and team player of the Justice League. And if you listen to the performances of Kevin in Injustice 1, you can tell that he had a lot of fun playing the character, but for most of the game, he is Regime Batman. And then based on how well people liked Regime Batman, when Injustice 2 came out in 2017, we didn't follow the story of that bright, optimistic Batman anymore. We were taken back to that really grim world where Superman had become a dictator. And Kevin again played basically another version of that same character we were introduced to in 2013. It's one of my favorite, like, Justice League games, even though Superman is a villain. I don't really like the Superman villain archetype that we have today, but that game just was a masterpiece. That same year, of course, Batman Flashpoint Paradox 2013. And in that movie, Kevin Conroy is at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. He really just sounds like your regular, like, Batman performance. He's only in the movie for 7 minutes, but he really sells it. The movie begins with Kevin Conroy's Batman, and it ends with Kevin Conroy's Batman. He does the scene where, at the end of the movie, Barry shows up with the letter from Thomas Wayne, and the emotion that Kevin has, just in the few lines that he has in that movie, just really, it makes you feel for Batman, like, being so relieved and also deeply saddened to get a letter from his parents after all that time. And also, you know, he's very relieved, and that letter changes Batman. You know, because that Batman kind of has closure, that his parents are proud of what he became. You know? That was one of the only really good things about the New 52, is the fact that Batman, you know, never had to worry about what his family thought about what he became. You know? Whereas every other Batman up until Flashpoint Batman, like, you know, New 52, they waged their war on crime, and they thought that, you know, would my parents ever be proud of what I've become and things like that, and, you know, I'm doing this for them and they'll never know. The fact that Thomas Wayne Batman knew what his son became and how proud he was, and, you know, Kevin just, like, really rocks that scene. Even though it's very brief, you can feel the emotional gravity behind it. And it's one of my, it's a great moment in animation. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Kevin Conroy reprised his role for some mini shorts known as the DC Nation Block in 2013. He appeared in the Metropolis stories and reprised his role as Batman, and he played kind of comedic Batman. He was still playing the straight man, in a sense, like straight man comedy, but he was very funny with playing off Lois Lane, who I don't know who the Lois Lane actress was. The animation was fun and quirky, and Kevin Conroy was a delight in that brief little skit that made fun of a lot of elements of Batman, but also was a nice little tribute to the character as well. And that was an exclusive to Cartoon Network. And at this point, I've lost track of how many different multiverse Batmans Kevin has done at this point. A lot. By 2014, he's done a lot. He also did the Bruce Timm short, Stranger Times, where he played a Batman from 1939. He only has 2 lines in the entire short, but when I was watching that short for the first time on my computer, I was really hoping and praying that this animated Batman would be Kevin Conroy. And when I heard him speak, it just filled me with so much relief and joy, because it was an awesome Bruce Timm short that echoed what, you know, 1930s Batman was like. And I was just like, you know, that cherry on the top, it has to be Kevin. It just has to. You can't do this without Kevin Conroy's Batman. He looks like animated series Batman. This feels like animated series Batman could go a different direction, like if he was like a little bit more like murderous or whatever. Like this is perfect. Just as soon as he speaks, please let this be Kevin. And then when he spoke and it was Kevin, I was just like, I was floored. I was like, wow, that is amazing. And then, of course, he came back for a Batman Beyond short for the 75th anniversary of Batman, where he once again reprised his role with Will. And in that, they're playing against a version of Hordak, or not Hordak, dang it, Hardak. Sorry, I mixed my She-Ra and Batman stuff because it's 4 in the morning, and before this I talked for 2 hours, and no one could hear me, so that was terrifying. Talk about echo chamber stuff, talking to yourself and nobody heard you. Stupid YouTube. Anyway, he fought the Hardak version of himself, so he did robot voice plus his old man Bruce Wayne and his Batman voice, and it's a great short. It's only like 5 minutes long, but it's handled really well. And I wish actually we got more mini shorts as that, but it was a nice tribute to the Batman Beyond universe and the dynamic between Terry and Batman. It was great. And Kevin did a fantastic job in that. He appeared again in 2014 for the Assault on Arkham movie, which is not canon to the Arkham games, but it's canon to the Arkham comics. And that movie is more or less what you would expect from Arkham. It's not anything groundbreaking. The movie's okay. I'd probably give the movie like an 8, maybe. It's very gory and violent, so it's not really my cup of tea. I don't really like a lot of gore and stuff like that. There are heads that explode, and there's violence for the sake of violence, and it's just not my thing. I don't like that stuff. So I've seen the movie like once. I'm probably never gonna watch it again anyway. Kevin Conroy, actually, he's in it, but Batman does not play, I would say, a starring role in that. It's like he's a co-starring role. Or maybe even he's like a side character in it. It's mostly about the Suicide Squad taking on the Joker in Arkham Asylum. That's the whole premise of the movie. I know I'm not driving very well. It's almost 5 in the morning. I think you can forgive me for that. I'm just having fun playing Arkham. Miles better than Gotham Knights. Anyway, let's see. Next on my list is Crisis on Infinite Earths video game, 2015. So we're in the year 2015 now. Kevin Conroy came back and voiced a lot of different Batmen, if you didn't know, in Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was a decent PC game. He played, I think, 6 or 7 different Batmen from the multiverse, with a familiar tone, but also he incorporated certain styles of his voice and mannerisms for like different types of multiverse Batman. And the game was okay. I don't know if you can still find a way of playing it anymore. I never did anything with it because 2015 I was very heavily into Arkham Knight, so I didn't, really get a chance to do a lot with that game. By the time I wanted to look into Infinite Crisis, that game had already grown cold, so there was really no reason for it. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. But the people I know that played that game said it was better than DC Universe Online. It was a different type of RPG experience. But the storyline was really cool, and I regret that I never got a chance to look at it. And it's probably hard to get that game today. In 2015, besides Arkham Knight, Kevin Conroy appeared as the voice of Thomas Wayne in the Batman vs. Robin movie, part of the new 52 animated films. I don't know if you guys knew that, but Kevin Conroy plays Thomas Wayne in that. It was like originally it was supposed to be a passing of the torch thing, and Kevin was going to be done with the animated Batman movies and let somebody else, play the role for a very long time. I remember him issuing a statement that he was going to be done with the voice of Batman after Arkham Knight, even though he was actually doing the Battle for Metropolis 4D theme park attraction at Six Flags. He was the voice of Batman Bruce Wayne, and also he did Arkham Knight, and then he appeared a year later in the Batman Arkham, what was that Arkham game? Batman Arkham Underworld, which I was sponsored by Warner Brothers to do. And that game sucked. Just full disclosure. I was paid to play that game, and I did not like it. And I think I made like 1 or 2 videos on it, and that was it. And I'm pretty sure when I did the videos, I don't remember saying anything positive or negative. I was just kind of like trying to... what's the word I'm looking for? I wasn't trying to be showing favoritism to the game or portraying it in a way that's like makes it appealing to play, but at the same time I wasn't condescending or my snarky attitude that, you know, I'm known for when I don't like something. I was very I was quiet in a sense. I was just like telling people what type of game it was. Well, that's random. Why did Arkham City install? Oh well. Hopefully that doesn't mess this game up. Talk about random. Wasn't counting on that. Hello. Oh my gosh. That threw me off now. I don't even know. That's like freaky ghost stuff. Wasn't counting on that. I didn't even install that game. I uninstalled that game years ago. Freaky. Oh well. So yeah, Arkham City Underworld was a mobile game, and I worked with Warner Brothers to try to promote that, but I didn't like it. And I only made like one video on it. Arkham Knight, you guys already know a lot about that game, so I'm not gonna, you know, step on any toes talking about that. I don't want to. It was a great game. I didn't like it as much as City, but I really enjoyed Kevin Conroy's performance in this game. I come back and play this game from time to time just the free roaming because I love the environments. I like driving the Batmobile. I like the combat. I don't have Kevin's voice on right now because when I was recording news videos, which I do a couple times a week, I don't like hearing the voices because with ADD, basically I get distracted by things and I can lose my train of thought. So the only things that I have on is the sound effects and, you know, like some of the ambient backgrounds like snow falling on the ground or, you know, water or whatever. I don't have music or voice on. And I don't have subtitles either because I don't want to be distracted by things. Because I can get easily distracted by stuff. Which is normal for ADD kids. So, but that's why some people ask behind the scenes, like, why don't you have the voices and the music on when you do your news? It's like, because it would be distracting to me. Just like when I do my podcasts or whatever and I'm you know, using Arkham stuff, I can't have stuff playing because I'll get distracted. So yeah, Arkham Knight was great. 2016 was kind of a hit and miss for Conroy. He had 2 big projects that came out that year. 3 big projects, sorry. Batman the Killing Joke, and Batman the Arkham VR game, and Viewmaster Batman. I would say out of all 3 of those projects, Viewmaster Batman was peak and really fun. Kevin Conroy and surviving members of the animated series got together and recorded some fun stuff with that Viewmaster thingy, which I have. Warner Brothers sent me a copy of it. I've never really done anything with it. I don't even know how to record footage of that thing. But it was a really neat experience to experience. It was like feeling like you were a part of the animated series come to life in front of you. Way better than the Arkham VR game that Rocksteady made, which was a weird storyline where Kevin is hallucinating as Batman due to, you know, the Joker taking over his mind, and he experiences things that never happened. It was all a dream, and then it leads right into the events of the beginning of Arkham Knight, which is not canon, by the way, because it's never mentioned in the Arkham Knight game ever. Like, Nightwing doesn't make mention of it. Batman and Alfred never make mention of it. It's never happened. Just like how in the comics, Batman is investigating the murder of Bane, but Bane is alive and well in Arkham Knight. Like, it just, you know, sometimes the comic books and other games, they don't really connect well with what the finished product is. So when it comes to video games, you have to look at, oh, okay, this is canon because this actually happened in the game, and there's no mention of this stuff that happened in the comic in the game. That's how you do that. My bad. I didn't mean to run you over. The Killing Joke, where do we begin? The Killing Joke was a passion project for both Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill because they really liked Alan Moore's story, even though Alan Moore hates his story. Did not age well with certain things. Bruce Timm, who had a lot of good things going for him at the time, was approached with the idea of making the Killing Joke movie. And in order to make it a movie, well, they had to incorporate things in the movie that never happened before, and it actually made the story worse. It is by far one of the worst DC animated films ever made, and it is pretty disturbing how they took Alan Moore's book, which they accuse of rape culture with Batgirl, and they made it more rapey. If you can believe that. These people that were grandstanding and saying that, you know, there were horrible atrocities that happened to Batgirl, how can we make it worse? Let's have this dude who's just some random mob boss basically, you know, do all these terrible things to Batgirl, and then afterwards we're going to have Batgirl lose it and jump Batman's bones. It's like, there we go. That's definitely what people want in the Killing Joke story. Because people love the Batgirl and Batman romance. Nope, no they don't. You know why they did that? Because Bruce Timm is a pervert. That's why. Bruce Timm, for years, has been drawing some very, we'll say, risque images of the girls that he created in his universe. That is not safe for work, I will tell you that. You know, if he likes doing that, that's, you know, I'm not going to congratulate him on that because that's kind of creepy, but, you know, you do you, Bruce Timm. But please stop putting it in your movies randomly, because it's just weird. It just kind of like takes away from, you know, people's good memories of the shows that you made, and it kind of adds like a bad taste to some of them. Also, like the whole idea of a dude who basically watched his best friend's daughter grow up, and then he decides, you know what, it's totally fine for me to get together with this chick. That was just all kinds of heebie-jeebies gross, and I hope to God it never happens again. Because essentially, Batgirl is not just a mentor relationship, it's also, this dude is around the same age as my dad, and I've known him for pretty much all my life. He's known me since I was a little girl, and I am totally comfortable with giving myself to him. Ugh. There's all kinds of wrong things involved with that, both on a psychological level and just in a ew. So, yeah. Looking back on that movie, Kevin Conroy did not have the best things to say about that film. He really enjoyed the original Alan Moore story, and he loved working with Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill only really did Batman movies if Kevin Conroy was involved. They were a duet. If Kevin was approached in a project, then Mark Hamill would, you know, leap at the opportunity to reprise his role. They had a perfect chemistry as, you know, partners in crime, so to speak. Batman being the antithesis to Joker, and Joker being the other half of Batman. And they would work so well together. And that's why, basically, they kept appearing in numerous projects together. Off and on. But, yeah, that was The Killing Joke, and sorry for bringing that up. I'm never going to talk about that movie again, because that movie still gives me nightmares, for a lot of reasons. 2017, Injustice 2, Batman, back again. This time it is Kevin Conroy's portrayal of the regime Batman, who has more layers to his Batman onion. And we get to see more of the relationship between Damian and Batman and Superman and stuff like that. Kevin hits it out of the park again. Some people said some pretty nasty things in the media about Kevin Conroy's reprisal of Batman in Injustice. They said his performance was kind of stale, and they said some other not very nice things. They were also accustomed to hearing different Batman actors like Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker, who they said probably would have handled the role of this Batman better, along other things. I bet you now, after everything that's happened, I think people are maybe less critical of what Kevin brought to the table as Batman, because it was around this time, supposedly, that he was getting sick and a little bit frail. So I hope that people will remember that this man gave so much to us when basically he was losing his health. And, you know, when you think about it in that light, it's not, you know, not cool. 2017 is also the year I met Batman for the first time. I believe. I did have a podcast interview with him when I worked at a publication that was exclusive to the website, and I got to ask him a bunch of questions, but it wasn't the same as actually, you know, being there and meeting the person. Amber and I stayed in line for some time for Kevin, and it was a very interesting experience to wait that long to meet your hero. I remember Kevin was very gracious, very humble. I stammered a little bit because it was, you know, it was hard meeting your hero, but he was a very sweet man. He cut his lunch break short when he saw how big his line was, and he said he already finished eating anyway. He was supposed to take 45 minutes to eat, and he only took a 15-minute break. When I remember about seeing Kevin, that was so hard for me, and I made a mental note in my head, but I didn't say anything to him, and I'm glad I didn't, because ADD people are blunt, and sometimes we say things that are, you know, based on observation. Kevin looked very frail. He looked really sick, but he still had his booming voice, and he looked like he was moving around okay, but he was drinking a lot of water. Like, I remember seeing on his, compared to the other actors that were there, like, Kevin had a lot of water bottles. Like, he was staying hydrated a lot. When I shook his hand, I felt like I was going to break his hand, because when I do handshakes in the industry, I do firm handshakes. Not like to prove superiority or anything like that. It's just my boss taught me that when a man shakes a person's hand, that you give a firm handshake as a way of, like, you know, just saying hello and, you know, getting all businesslike, right? When I squeezed Kevin's hand, I felt like it was gonna break a little bit. Like it was like he was trying to meet my handshake back, you know, but it was like, it felt weird. It was like when you shake the hand of your grandpa, you know? And at that point, it was kind of awkward for me, because I'd already started, like, the gentleman shake. Like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and you were such a huge inspiration to me, and blah, 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 and this is my wife, and one of our fondest memories of first getting married was watching Justice League, and we cover your games for a living. I was a stammering idiot. We didn't have a lot of money, like, because all our money went into the hotel, and we just bought an awesome Mask of the Phantasm poster that he autographed for us. And we didn't have enough money for a photo, but he gave us a photo anyway. And he spent, like, 6 minutes talking to us, and he was just, you know, it was surreal. Like, he was such a very kind man. It felt like talking to, like, your grandpa or something like that. You know, he was very interested. He was very thankful for, you know, how many years that we've followed his performances, he was a little fuzzy on some of the things I talked to him about. Like, he didn't remember doing Batman Vengeance or Rise of Sinzu, or, you know, some of the theme park attractions that he did and the commercials and any of that. He just remembered, like, the animated series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, and the Arkham games. He didn't even remember DC Universe Online. And I didn't say anything at the time, but I was just kind of like, you know, it doesn't... I remember talking to Amber in the taxi back home, or back to the hotel where we were, and I was just like, I don't know, I have this feeling that he's dealing with something, like some type of illness. Like, it doesn't, you know, either he's just a very thin man, or he just feels like, and Amber's like, I'm going to stop you right there. I had that same feeling when he gave me a hug, that, you know, he's not well. But she says maybe he's just overworked or something. You know? And I put it in the back of my mind. I was just kind of like, you know, it's probably nothing. You know, the dude goes to so many conventions. He works so hard. You know, he's been doing the voice of Batman for 25 years or something like that. It's got to do a toll on his voice or something like that. And, you know, you can't stop aging. Like, but then, you know, I remembered something, that when I was in the hotel that night, my grandfather, like, who passed away a year after meeting Kevin Conroy, my grandfather was a very big, healthy man, right? Like, big Irish guy that used to be like 180 pounds, and he had like Popeye-style muscles. And in his last year, my grandfather, the cancer made him like really thin. Like, you could almost see the bones in his arms. Like, and he was a muscular guy. Like, he was, you know, he was in the army. He was a police officer for so many years. He was a police officer for like 20 years after the military. So, you know, he was like one of those typical like Irish stereotype guys, you know, except most Irish guys don't marry Portuguese women, because I don't know, they just don't. They don't. Usually it's supposed to be like fire and water. And they did bicker a bunch, but, you know, they loved each other a lot. But, you know, my grandfather, he was, in his last years, he was very, very frail. And in my mind, I just couldn't, you know, I just couldn't shake certain things about meeting Kevin. Like, you know, I put it in the back of my head, and I never mentioned anything. And I was on my best behavior when I went back to Comic-Con and other things, and, you know, people asking me what I thought about Kevin and stuff like that. I didn't say anything. I kept it all private. I just kind of like pushed it in the back of my head. You know, maybe he's just overworked, or, you know, the convention circuit is running him ragged and stuff like that. But I really believe that based on how he looked then and how he progressively got worse, that he was a lot sicker than he told the fans, but he loved the fandom so much that he just kept going, you know? In fact, I think that based on how much he enjoyed going to cons and playing his character and stuff like that, that the prolonged work that he got, and, you know, that feeling of being needed and having, like, something to do, I think that prolonged his lifespan by many years. Like, he had a purpose. And, like, he had something to look forward to. And I really think that the pandemic kind of changed a lot of stuff for Kevin. Because he couldn't be that social butterfly anymore. And everybody was, like, stuck at home. It probably did a lot. And also, if he was being treated for stuff, you couldn't really be treated when, you know, when the world was shut down. And this is, again, just my personal feelings based on observation. I'm not saying that this is fact or anything. This is just based on observing things and seeing how he was in his last couple of years, you know. It's purely just, you know, my own experience. It's not like I'm a doctor or anything like that, so don't quote me on that or anything. So anyway, we're still in the year 2017. There was another Batman movie that came out by Bruce Timm, which a lot of people think is connected to the DC animated universe. It's really not, but it's in the style of that. It's an adult rendition of it known as the Batman Harley Quinn thing. Whoops. Some of you guys know how I feel about that movie. I like parts of that movie, but there's some really weird stuff in it with Nightwing and Harley. Batman and Harley Quinn is a PG-13 movie where Lauren Lester comes back and reprises his role as Nightwing. And, you know, it's an interesting movie. It's not for youngins. It's an adult movie with adult conversations and other stuff. And more of Bruce Timm's mind you. Oh, Bruce Timm. Oh my gosh. Okay, so where are we? We are in we're getting near the last years now. Okay, so at the end of 2017, there was a new animated Justice League show that debuted, Justice League Action, where the first episode actually has Batman say, "Did you miss me? I'm back." And it's the voice of Kevin Conroy in this new Justice League universe. Justice League Action was just how the name suggests. It was a short Justice League show that ran for only 2 years, and it had 10-minute episodes based on what animators believed and show creators' attention spans of viewers was going. They were making shorter episodes of Batman stuff and, you know, superhero shows. Based on the success of Teen Titans Go and some other anime at the time, they wanted to go with shorter stuff. So Justice League Action were basically mini episodes that still ran for a total of 30 minutes, but they were broken up somewhere between 2 episodes that may or may not be continued, or they were 3 episodes, so that would equal, you know, 30 minutes. The shows were fun. It was basically kind of like a comedy show, but not to the same extent as Teen Titans Go. I would say that the comedy and the action was very reminiscent to the 2004-2003 Teen Titans show, where sometimes the Teen Titans show broke up some of the action with some comedic elements. Kevin was hilarious in the show. He did sound a little different. Like, his Batman was a little bit more gravelly than you would think in kind of like a comedy. I love how the cars are scared of Batman just walking. That's funny. I really enjoyed Justice League Action. I thought it ended too soon. There's a lot of things in the show that are hilarious, as well as like incorporating different Batmen that Kevin Conroy has done, such as spoofing the Injustice games, doing stuff with the animated series, and some other like Elseworlds Batman stuff. Very great show. I don't know if it's on DVD or not. I have a lot of episodes paid for on Amazon Prime that I can watch digitally, and I really enjoy that, and it was cool. So that was Justice League Action. It ran until 2018. Some people say it debuted in 2016, but I believe it debuted in 2017 and ran just 1 year. In 2018, we also had DC Superheroes, Lego DC Supervillains, and Kevin Conroy reprised his role as Batman as Lego Batman, giving us both a straight man performance as well as some comedic, one-liners that worked for the Lego universe. I may be mistaken, but I think Mark Hamill played the Joker in that game. If I could get clarification from that, that would be fantastic. I can't remember because it was so long ago. You guys are dealing with the stinky bot. Sorry about that. Yoink. I think Hamill played Joker, but I don't remember. I want to say he did, because Mark Hamill followed Kevin Conroy to the Justice League action show and played a different version of the Joker, but also played opposite of Kevin Conroy's Batman. Even though they only had like a few episodes together, his Joker was in the same universe as Kevin Conroy's Batman, which just showed the friendship of the two men, and also the fact that Mark Hamill said exactly what he meant. that his Joker would always follow Kevin's Batman. Whatever Kevin did as Batman, Mark Hamill wanted to do as Joker. Mark Hamill was Joker in it? Okay. Well, there you go. So, I did extensive coverage of Lego DC Supervillains when it came out. It was my last contracted thing with Warner Brothers. We have not been a part of Warner Brothers' content creator program ever since that game finished. We had a lot of fun with that game. We went to New York City and did some press stuff with it. And Kevin was there. And he met the press. And it wasn't as awkward, I believe, meeting him again, but he didn't remember us. Also, it was very easy for Kevin to appear at the press thing for that game because he lived in New York City, which a lot of people don't know that. But, yep. It wasn't, like, really meeting him as a fan, though, and it's not like we had any one-on-one time with him. He was there to answer a bunch of questions for the press, and, you know, there was some other people there, but I can't really tell you, you know, what the significance of that was, because it wasn't the same as meeting Kevin, you know, when he was at the con tour. Like, it was very professional, and it looked like he had a lot of fun talking about his version of Lego Batman. So, that was a fond memory. But again, that was our last time working with Warner Brothers as a content creator. And we're still press and everything like that, but we're not obviously on WB's radar. Well, maybe we are on their radar, but not in a good way. Oh, that's fun. That's a story for another day. Kevin Conroy reprised his role as Batman in Batman the Animated Series spoof on Teen Titans in 2018-2019. And it was a fun little thing. The short episode, Robin is in Batman's shadow, and the Robin is being played by, of course, Robin from Teen Titans. And Kevin Conroy is not even trying to hide the fact that he's playing comedic Batman. Batman can't find Robin, and he keeps asking where Robin is. And Robin says, I'm over here, and Kevin's like, where? And he's like, I'm right here in your shadow. You know how Robin jokes around being in Batman's shadow? Well, in the joke for Teen Titans, Robin is literally standing in Batman's shadow, and Batman can't find him. And the animation style is based on the animated series. So, you know, it was kind of funny. In that short, basically Robin quits being Batman's sidekick, and Batman is all depressed, and he's like, Is it the pants? He says, because I can get you actual pants. And Robin's like, no, it's not the pants. Well, maybe it is, but he says, no, I'm just tired of being in your shadow. And Batman's like, what? And then Robin's like, still in your shadow. He's like, oh, you know. So I mean, it's a funny little thing that's on YouTube. I think you guys should watch that, even if you don't like Teen Titans Go, because it shows, like, you know, that Kevin was also known for his comedy roles, because he did appear in certain, like, 80s and 90s, like, sitcoms as guest roles and stuff like that. Whatever work he could get as an actor, he did. And it just shows that he did have a natural gift for comedy if he needed to do it as well. His gift for comedy reminds me of how natural Brendan Fraser is. You know, the guy from the Mummy movies and George of the Jungle. It's like that type of, like, you know, you just... When you hit that joke, it's like, it's just perfect. And even though that was like a super jokey show, it felt like Kevin was both tributing his, you know, original role in the animated series, but also adding, you know, some little fun to the Teen Titans universe, poking fun at his character, which, you know, not a lot of actors will do that. Sometimes actors are very like, well, you know, Batman wouldn't do this, and I'm not reprising my role for this, blah, blah, blah. So the fact that he could kind of joke around with, like, his more serious character, I respect that tremendously. I thought that was very cool. And again, it's a funny little episode. Next up, we have what's known as Kevin Conroy's final film. which was known as Justice League versus the Fatal Five. Fantastic, fantastic movie. I am not going to do any spoilers for you because that movie is so recent. So watch that movie on your own. Even though it's his last film performance, supposedly, it is just as close as you will get to a Justice League reunion. Susan and either Tim or George Newbern are back as Superman and Wonder Woman respectively, and they're working with new Justice Leaguers. But the three Trinity members are in that movie, and it's a great film. I strongly recommend that you guys watch it if you haven't already. Whenever you get a chance, I think you'll really like it, and it's a perfect send-off to the animated Batman, as well as Kevin Conroy's last film, if it is indeed his last film role. I don't know if he was working on another movie or not, because, you know, it was a pandemic, and most actors recorded from home, or because they all had studios. Let's see. Kevin appeared in Scooby-Doo, Guess Who, as Batman, again spoofing his animated series counterpart. So if you're familiar with what Kevin's role was in that movie, then or that show, then you know it's a funny episode, and it spoofs the 60s like Batman and Robin special with Joker and Penguin. And it was handled pretty well. I enjoyed it. I laughed a lot. Batman is kind of like not necessarily the butt of the joke in that. Like, there are funny things that happen to him that revolve around him, which is why we call that the straight man comedy. Like, Batman's aware of the joke, but he doesn't really act funny. Like, there are other characters that act funny around him, which in turn makes him funny. It's a really fun comedic thing that, you know, happens. Amber and I kind of do that. Sometimes I act as like the straight man and she's the goofball, and like it just we just play off each other so well. Kevin did a really great job like playing off the Scooby-Doo cast, and it works. It's a really funny episode, and if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you watch it. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, and you can see it on, I believe you can see clips of it here on YouTube if you wanted to watch it. You know, I'm not going to twist anybody's arm. The Scooby-Doo Guess Who show is okay. It's not like groundbreaking or anything like that, but I really like Batman's animation and stuff in that. It's a nice little tribute to the animated series, personally. Let's see, what's next? I'm kind of running out of roles now, unfortunately. Sorry, because we're in the year 2019, so things are kind of winding down. 2019, he had a role that I really didn't like, and that was playing evil Bruce Wayne in the Batwoman show. A lot of people had a mixed reaction when they saw Kevin play live-action Batman. He was very happy to do it, but I feel like the role wasn't a good fit for him. Originally, that role was written for Michael Keaton, which is why they had like Knox and stuff and other things in it. It was supposed to be Keaton was going to play like this Kingdom Come Batman, but of course like they couldn't get Keaton to sign on because, well, we all know what happened to the Batman in that universe. He was super nerfed and he got killed very easily by Batwoman, like Mary Sue Woman. So I will always look back at that with disdain. I'm glad that, you know, Kevin had fun doing it and he was treated with respect on the set. But I feel like his character was not treated with respect in general. Even though he wasn't playing the animated Batman, they like played it up that he was, you know, playing one of his characters, except in live action. So I didn't like the script. I didn't like the story. I loved Kevin's performance, but there was so much about that I hated. And it was, you know, wasn't very good. Let's see. Non-Batman related, Kevin appeared in Masters of the Universe, the Kevin Smith show. He played Merman, and I thought he was excellent in it. I don't know if he'll be reprising his role for the next season of the He-Man show, or if they, you know, were able to even incorporate him in the show. It's hard to know, like, what projects he was able to do voiceover for, you know, in his last year or two. It's possible he already did that, and we're just waiting for Netflix to release it, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. Technically, his last roles are 2 last roles. He recorded a lot of stuff for Multiverses, which is a fighting game that I cover quite a bit. And I really do enjoy that game. It'll be interesting to see how they incorporate other characters around Kevin's Batman going forward. I don't think that they would have the audacity to replace him or even have, like, you know, a voiceover guy that sounds similar to him. It's possible that he recorded tons of stuff for characters that we haven't even seen yet, because Kevin learned to get really good with NDAs after he kind of made a goof in 2013 about leaking the Arkham Origins game when he was working on Arkham Knight, and he thought that's the game people were talking about. He got reamed pretty bad by AT&T at the time. And Kevin had no idea. Like, nobody told him another Arkham game was in development. It had that. I really believe that's Warner Brothers' fault, you know, because Kevin was basically just your kind-hearted grandpa, and he had no idea that they were working on another Arkham game, because he was working on what he thought the other Arkham game was. You know? So, they should have been upfront with him. Because basically he got in big trouble with conventions, and for the longest time he used to have somebody shadow him, which he talked about, that would always make sure that they would prevent him from spilling the beans on certain things, because before they were going to ban him from conventions. And I think that's terrible to even suggest that to Kevin, because conventions was his whole life, you know? Outside of, you know, doing a few voiceover roles here and there, he made most of his money going to conventions. So to say that they were going to ban, Warner Brothers would find a way of banning him from conventions because of his slip-up about Arkham that one time, that was very wrong. And, you know, the people responsible for that, you know, shame on you. Because, I mean, you really scared Kevin. He doesn't really talk about that in, like, a very positive light, you know? So, I mean, definitely they had to have spooked him when that happened. And I know I talk about Kevin in the present tense. I'm dealing with things in my own way. I'm sorry. I know was, is, I'm supposed to be doing past tense, but it's going to take a while for my brain to come to terms, I guess. I know he's no longer with us, but the way that I talk about him and the way that I remember him, it feels like he's still alive. You know? So I don't know personally when I will be able to subconsciously not refer to him as past tense. It'll probably happen eventually, or, you know, I still sometimes talk about my grandpa like he's still around, because when I do, it feels like he's still around a little bit. And it's been almost 6 years now, I think. 'Cause he passed away right before our miscarriage, so it's quite a while ago. But Amber and I both still talk about him in the, you know, first current, whatever it's called. Okay. I really wanted Multiverses to be his last role, because I feel like it did everything that Kevin wanted with his character. Like, there's comedy, there's, you know, sarcasm, like, that Kevin was known for with his Batman character, especially the animated series. Rewatch the episode where, the Captain Clown thing, where Joker is about ready to fry in the, like, boiler or whatever, and Batman saves him at the last moment. There's a lot of sarcasm that Bruce actually, or rather Kevin, does in that. And it's a brilliant performance. It really is. There's so much to unpack from the animated series, even 30 years later, that people would be very surprised how talented the cast and crew was. and it's just never been mimicked. The Harley Quinn show is just like an R-rated, edgy show. It's not a very amazing, well-done show, and it's not something that's going to stand the test of time. It's just going to work for the era that it was made in, and then it's just going to fade away into obscurity. You know, it's a shock value show, that's all it is. Whereas the animated series was a love letter to Batman fans who hadn't really been given a show that would encompass everything that they loved about the character that was never really shown in both film or on television. And it did a marvelous job of incorporating so many elements of Batman's character, as well as finding the perfect person to voice Batman that will never be duplicated, ever. There's no one who will be able to play the role as long as Batman, Kevin, and there'll be, you know, no way his record is going to be beat. I personally emailed Guinness, and I know it's stupid, maybe not, but did you know that Kevin reprised the role of Batman in over 60 projects until his death? He played Batman over 60 times in 30 years, 1991 through 2021. Most of his vocal performances that you're hearing now in 2022 and in 2023 were recorded in 2021. I believe he did some ADR for multiverses. You know what ADR is? It's like grunts and things like that. But most of the principal, like, you know, voiceover stuff was recorded last year, at least from what I've heard. He might have done a little bit of stuff this year, but I don't know. If he did, then he was recording voices for characters that haven't appeared yet, that may have been, you know, data mined. But I don't know if Marvin the Martian was data mined or not. It's possible. Oh, I'm getting a little misty-eyed here a little bit. I think I talked for quite a while. He will be last heard in He-Man again, which, if you guys didn't know, Kevin liked He-Man a lot. He was really happy to be a part of the last iteration of the show. He plays Hordak in the other He-Man show, which they'll obviously replace him now, but I hope they don't. I hope we get to hear more of his Hordak. Because the CGI He-Man show is actually pretty good. I'd say it's better than Kevin Smith's Revelations thing. So I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but I know it's not Batman related, but I'm a big He-Man fan, so I was really excited to hear both Mark Hamill and Kevin were involved with one of the He-Man shows together, and I was surprised to hear that Kevin was involved with the other He-Man show. So, yeah. I think I'm pretty good. I don't, like I said, the hardest thing about getting older. I said this on my Twitter, but I didn't mean to get all profound. But the hardest thing about getting older is that we tend to outlive our childhood heroes. We see them pass away. And no other generation has been this connected to their TV and movie heroes as people our age, because they didn't stick around as long. You would have actors that would appear in like westerns or something, and they would be a part of just that TV show. They didn't attend conventions. That stuff didn't exist. After the show was done, then the person responsible behind the character that you loved growing up, they disappeared. You know, maybe they got some other acting jobs, and maybe you saw them offhand, but it's not the same as 90s and 80s kids experience now, where the people that you heard growing up, can be a part of your life, even if they're not family, for a very long time. In Batman's case, it was 30 years. For me, I'm 39 years old. That show, I know people really say that the idea of a show changing your life or giving you something to look forward to is stupid. But for a kid that grew up in poverty and very bad school experience, and it feels like Kevin's Batman kind of reached out to me the way that he did another Robin or Ace, or because he was there for a lot of important parts of my life. If you think about it, like when I was the age of Robin, I was like 8, and then when I was going into high school, and then when, you know, I was coming out of a really bad college experience, and then when I joined the video game field, yeah, it was pretty extraordinary to, you know, have something like that in your life, and part of me was hoping that was going to continue for a while longer, like, because it was just kind of like an old friend that was always there, you know, in part of your mind. I know it sounds silly, but that's what makes 80s and 90s kids so special, is because our heroes, unlike our parents and grandparents when they had things like Western or you know, certain film heroes they looked up to, or radio, those people would disappear after their time in the spotlight was done. After their time in the spotlight, our childhood heroes found ways of still staying around and making a difference to generation after generation. And I really respect that. I don't know how many people were impacted by, you know, just the idea of having something to look forward to that filled their life with joy the way it did for me, at least twice in my life. And I will never forget what that show and the cast and the writers and the people responsible for Justice League meant to me, or, you know, so many aspects of my life. And even the Arkham people. Like, I love the Arkham games because of just that connection continues. It expanded. It went from the animated series to, you know, more stuff in high school. And it always seemed to follow when things got rough and when things got better. It's a very, really nice feeling. I'm sorry. So, thank you, Kevin, for being our Batman. And thank you for being there for the darkest moments of my childhood, and also the best parts of my my adult life. And I will always say nothing but good things about the work that you did, and I really do hope that somehow Guinness or someone else would, you know, honor that legacy that you did, portraying the character more than anybody else, because I think that is an amazing feat, and it's not something that most actors will be able to repeat, because they always recast people based on their age or based on the project. So, you know, the idea of another Batman doing the role is long. I don't think that'll happen. But anyway, you guys have a great night. I have to put together the short, and I have to get my other things. I was planning on having some time to myself, but I ended up talking to myself for 2 hours before, because YouTube wouldn't allow my video to go live because it flagged my thing for the copyright footage, and it said it was holding my my live stream. And I didn't see the warning, so I had no way of knowing I wasn't even live yet. So I basically had to say goodbye twice in one video, and I couldn't take it the second time. I'm sorry, but you guys have a great day, and I will see you. I'll see you around. I'll be fine by this afternoon. No worries. I might go wake Amber up later.